Can you tell us a little about Jeremiah? What makes him unique and full of life?
Sure. That's actually the first time somebody's put it like that. A lot of times people ask about him more from a diagnosis standpoint. So to hear you say, hey, tell me why he's so full of life, that means a lot. Jeremiah, of course, 6 years old, super spunky, but his personality is similar to other kids' own. 6 years old, 7 years old, you're used to kids being full of life, running around, playing, talking, getting into stuff, being mischievous, and exploring the world around them. Jeremiah is very similar to that, but it's done more in an adaptive form. So he explores with his eyes, with his fingers, even with his feet. He's always trying to get into something. There are some limitations, of course, because of his diagnosis, but he still tries to do everything that a child his age would do.
And can you describe briefly his diagnostic odyssey or the syndrome condition he's born with?
Sure. Interestingly enough, we didn't know that he was born with it, like many other mitochondrial diseases. He was born healthy, normal, actually reached certain milestones like other babies would. And then he started just becoming very floppy. So he could no longer lift his head. He was breastfed, but he started not being able to feed too long. And that's when I really had concerns. It seemed like if he was just always tired, he didn't have energy, and you could tell that he was working hard to breathe. So I took him to his pediatrician, who back then said, hey, he was just being lazy. So I started with my phone documenting every detail of his life, especially when I saw things that made me a little bit concerned. We were able to get a physical therapy referral with Miss Jessica. And at first, the doctor was saying, well, we'll do a PT referral to see if it's just torticollis since he can't lift his head up anymore. Upon examining his entire body, Miss Jessica said no, he needed to get genetic testing done, and you would need to also see a neurologist. So we went back to the doctor's office, but unfortunately, they sent the wrong parent information with his file so that nobody was able to get in contact with us. About a week or two passed, and I started getting frustrated because he was still declining. And I was packing up the car to head to Duke Hospital in North Carolina because I heard they were a good research hospital. And it just so happened that night I went online and used the contact us forms from various genetic offices in order to see if somebody had my file, if we could be seen, or how we can get an appointment. That morning, Miss Shannon, she called me from Greenwood Genetics. It was a Monday morning. And she basically said, hey, we actually have your file, but we haven't been able to contact you because the information, the referral information was incorrect on his file. She was able to work us in a very timely manner. And instead of us waiting months, or in some cases the following year, we were able to get an appointment within a few days. First, they did a telehealth visit where they looked over his body. But with TK2D, from a virtual standpoint, there were no visual signs to say, hey, this is what it is. Because a lot of times with rare diseases, you get misdiagnosed because muscle weakness can be other diseases. You can think about SMA. I mean, there's so many different things that you can pinpoint. So the need for genetic testing was crucial, but it was also timely. After the first appointment, we had a follow-up appointment to provide blood work. So we had to give blood samples, myself and his dad, and they sent that off. We were told it was going to take 8 to 10 weeks to get the results, but I think it only took like 2 or 3 weeks, which was a blessing. Once they let us know exactly what it was, unfortunately back then, the only resource we were given was UMDF, which is the United Mitochondrial Disease Foundation. But there was no approved treatment. There was no cure. It was like there was no hope pretty much for the disease. There were no good stories. And Google, as you know, Google can sometimes just intensify the grief of such a diagnosis. So that's a little bit about how he got diagnosed.
And how did you find the strength to keep going when he was first diagnosed with TK2D?
God, when Jeremiah first got diagnosed, I went to Grandma Cat's house and I cried and cried. I finally made it home. He happened to get diagnosed during Mitochondrial Disease Awareness Week. So it was just crazy timing because I knew nothing of mito. And then to be thrown into the world, get such a devastating diagnosis, but then to see all this awareness about the disease, it was quite a time. But I always say there was big G, which is God, and little g, which is Google. So God literally has given us strength from day one.
And what inspired you to start the Jeremiah Grayson TK2D Foundation, and what do you hope it achieves?
So with this foundation, I started it because of hope and because of God. So what I hope for it to achieve through us posting his daily journey on all social media platforms is pretty much for more awareness. I think throughout the journey, I've learned to give people grace because you can't be upset with a doctor if they don't know about the diagnosis. So I had to go back and literally ask God to allow me to forgive people, give them grace. And so a part of that was then a follow-up item, which is creating a space where I can raise awareness. A lot of times we can raise awareness as parents, but being able to get into certain rooms in terms of in a professional way, you have to have an organization to go along with the mission that you want to spread. So regarding awareness, I can now take the fact that we have an organization and reach out to different companies, reach out to different professional organizations and collaborate with them from a professional standpoint, yet still offer a very personal, intimate perspective behind it.
What message would you like to share with families who may just be receiving a TK2D diagnosis?
My message has always been about hope, but it's been a little bit different because I've gotten to see hope manifest in a way that I know only God could have done. This past Monday, November the 3rd, the first ever worldwide treatment for TK2D was approved by the FDA. So that was a major goal. That was something we were always helping to advocate from, whether it's from the back lines or whether it's in the front lines. It was just always a dream, a hope, so that others can get access to such treatment options. So my message to them would always be to keep hope alive, and no matter what it looks like, just literally trust God and he'll make a way.
And have there been moments when medical news brought both relief and worry?
Yes. So with the clinical trial, of course, because it's not 100% certain, 100% proven, and with the nature of the disease being more of I don't want to say newly found because it's been around for a while, but thanks to research and technology, we can use things like genetic testing and understanding a little bit more. But because there wasn't a lot of research and data about the disease, yes, there were times when it had me nervous, but being able to see Jeremiah get stronger over time, which is the opposite of the disease, because with TK2D, the earlier the onset, the more severe the decline. So he's on a ventilator because both of his lungs collapsed. He uses a wheelchair, and I assist him with all of his daily living activities. But his grip has gotten stronger, his kick has gotten stronger, even his expressions and his mannerisms, everything's getting stronger over time. So being able to hold on to the little glimmers allows me to push the fear of the unknown to the side.
Has Jeremiah been through any clinical trial?
Yes. So the one that was just passed for TK. So with the clinical trial, it has slowed down the progression of the disease to the point where he doesn't experience a lot of regression often. But we do want to take into consideration the fact that life, so with him growing, with him doing things like teething, let's just say if he had an allergic reaction to something, if he gets a cold, those things can cause it to seem like if he might be regressing a little bit, but that's just because his body is getting accustomed to the stimuli that's causing him to work a little bit harder, if that makes sense. But in terms of the progression of the disease, it has drastically slowed down, and he's been getting the time to catch up, per se, and get stronger in every aspect of his life.
And how do you decide whether a new treatment or this clinical trial might be right for Jeremiah, other than genetic testing?
Okay, so I wouldn't say other than genetic testing, because that's your foundation. So without genetic testing, without certain types of tests, such as you can also do muscle biopsies, that will be your foundation to know if you need something extra. So just to keep that as the foundation, if I were to look at different clinical trials or different research, I wouldn't do it out of desperation. So I think a lot of times we might try to do things out of desperation and not take our time to see if it's something that's helping. One thing that I did with this clinical trial, I found a case with Charlie Gard, and he's all the way in the UK. And I found it on Google to tie it into the clinical trial and the medication that Jeremiah was going to be on. I also found another person in it. His name is Arturito. And I was able to see his dad share different parts of his journey before I decided, hey, I need to get Jeremiah into this. Now, going forward, of course, I would do the same regarding research and definitely pray about it to make sure that that's the direction that God wants us to go. So I'm pretty sure, hopefully, now that we've had this groundbreaking experience of being part of an approved treatment, with the way that science and technology moves forward these days, I'm pretty sure maybe gene therapy. I've actually found a couple articles where gene therapy is in the make. So as long as it's something that's safe, then I would definitely allow Jeremiah to be a part of it.
How do you care for your own emotional well-being while managing everything for Jeremiah?
Whew, that's a good question. I have a therapist. His name is Kelvin Durant. And I try to utilize his services to help me to remember to not stress the things that I can't control. So with the help of him, and of course, God, God gives us tools to balance not only our spiritual self, but also our entire being. I know when to just pause, take a hot shower. I have my phone on Do Not Disturb a lot of times, and I give myself grace. So I do as much as I can, and then the next day comes. I try not to beat myself up too much. There's a lot of isolation that comes into it. And then I have a lot of mom guilt from not being able to be there as often as I would like to in every way for my other kids, because life goes on for them. And most of my time is spent caring for Jeremiah, taking him to his appointments, and just being present for him. And I know that if I spend too much time in a dark space mentally, or being depressed or too upset, it will affect my ability to provide quality care for him. And kids, they read our energy. So I'm just always mindful of that and take a moment to pause when I need one.
What do you think one of the most support resources that you have so far in mind?
Okay. So for Jeremiah, from diagnosis with UMDF, and specifically Miss Margaret Moore, that was literally our only lifeline other than God. With UMDF, they're an amazing organization, literally advocating, raising awareness, doing everything from educating doctors to positioning parents like myself. They amplify our voice. They amplify literally every aspect of mitochondrial diseases. Through them, I've gotten the ability to be part of FDA listening sessions. I've gotten the ability to basically participate in research studies, gotten the ability to even do different sessions with the sponsoring pharmaceutical company of the actual treatment that Jeremiah was on, and that's UCB. I've even gotten the opportunity to serve as a consumer peer reviewer with the Department of the Defense for their medical programs. So UMDF is a huge, huge support. They even offer support groups. So they have virtual support group calls where parents like myself can get on there and ask certain questions and know they connect you with other families, but they also connect you with access to resources, especially in your area. They even have a huge conference once a year where there's hundreds of researchers, clinicians, patients, and families all come together simply to celebrate, raise awareness, and also, of course, advocate for mitochondrial diseases. So that's literally the best support. And through them, we've also met the Lilly Foundation, Mito Action, International Mito Patients. So they've been the number one source for me for sure.